He's watching over me. Take nothing for granted. Hey, good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited to be here on tonight. We are on Break Free. This is Lady C in the house tonight on IntellectualRadio.com. I have some phenomenal folks in the studio with me tonight. My co-host, Miss Melissa. Tell everybody hello, Melissa.
Hey, everybody.
And tonight, a very phenomenal young lady. When I say a phenomenal spirit, and I met her through her beautiful mother, another phenomenal spirit. I instantly connected, and I was like, I've got to stay in touch with her. She is a spoken word artist. Woo! When she spews, there is power in her words. She is a community activist. She is a mother. She is a daughter. She is a niece. I mean, she is a well-rounded, beautiful spirit. And her name is Miss Pearl Ramsey.
Yay!
So welcome, Pam. Welcome, Pam. I just gave you a little overview. I'm going to let her introduce herself properly and tell you about herself right now.
Well, I think you pretty much, I enjoyed hearing it from you. So I don't know that I could. Sometimes when we're more or less living it out. So sometimes it's not easy to define the journey. I'm all about the action. So I'm like, don't talk about it, be about it. But I appreciate hearing certain references from others who I admire or I appreciate because of the purity of what they bring to their offerings in the world. So I am, and I guess that's the best way to describe um, taking the road less traveled to the places where hope is most needed. So I guess we become whatever is necessary to balance the scales of justice and equality in terms of how we build equity and humanity for all the forces that create deficits. So I allow myself to, I guess, be present with each experience. I feel fortunate, to have certain gifts that are always still evolving and in ways that I use them. But I think the most important part of the journey for me is to be present with what I'm doing and not just doing. Because in every engagement with people is a different element of humanity that transforms you in the process. So each person brings something different to your life. So you can never, ever walk into a situation assuming that you know exactly what to be or what to do because you don't know people's story. So for me, it's about the honoring each person's journey because in that encounter, we are both teacher and student. So it's a transfer and exchange that is always happening and hoping that in each moment we are becoming more of who we were destined to be.
Amen. That was powerful. Did I tell you? She has some powerful pearls.
Oh, thank you.
That's how her name. She fits her name. Let me tell you, powerful pearls of wisdom coming off out of that beautiful, eloquent speaking with hers. And I am going to ask her to show her other side, her musical side a little bit too. So, she didn't know I was going to ask her to do that. But I am because we need to know the whole sister that's sitting next to me.
Sweet. Maybe I'll get to meet her too. We'll see.
So, on last week, I posed this question to my listening audience. And the question was, do Black people, Black people, do Black lives matter to Black people? That is the question that I posed to my listening audience. So I'm going to pose that question to you, Miss Pearl. Do Black lives matter to Black people?
Well, I think I understand the context of the question, and I think it's layered with it's layered with many different textures. So I'll answer it from first from a place that happens when we are having to address, confront, and deal with the epidemic of gun violence by our youth in our community. It's very frustrating from that perspective, having to be the ones to bury, console, and comfort those that are lost, in the fringes of it all. Um, Unfortunately, we are dealing in a very abnormal construct of this race based system. So, because it's a very linear system that has defined humanity with a very narrow window of expression, we are oftentimes forced to have to address ourselves within that window. Like, black is one thing. So, we are a mosaic and rich expression of the infinite design. So, when we say black, I think it's important to be able to bring to the table that there are many different versions of what that is, and that there have always been Black people who have been on the forefront. In fact, any human rights, any civil rights, which I think is an irony to call something civil, that you actually have to create a bill to tell people to be kind. But so, in that, you have created these rights, and any progress that has been made in terms of how we are embracing different expressions of human on the planet in this America has come through the Black American struggle and fight, to be honest and to be clear. Any freedoms that even white people outside of specific groups that were welcomed into this esoteric group of whiteness, even they were not included in those freedoms and those liberties. So when we look at liberty and freedom in terms of what America is, the Black American has been the pioneer for what freedom really looks like. Um, from the 13th and 14th Amendment, that was created and built upon the Emancipation Proclamation of the Black American and African descendants on this in this particular government. So when we're talking about Black lives mattering to Black people, of course, Black lives matter to us because we're Black. Of course, we care about our lives. Unfortunately, we're having to debate and negotiate our worth with a government and system that is anti-life, that fights against the very natural organic relationship that a human has to their body and to their self. In that oppressive system, then we begin to deal with how human beings account for their own self-worth. So for myself, yourself, and Melissa, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I said it correctly. We value our lives like millions of others. But of course there are people who are Black people and African descendants who are ignorant to their value and worth, who are destructive, because people are. In every group of people, you have that same dynamic. Um, we as Black people are always under the microscope of scrutiny because our struggle is most iconic and most visible to the world because of how we have had to assert ourselves into a government that didn't consider us a part of its particular design. And so that in and of itself is historic. So we are very influential in a government where we are minority in numbers only. Never discount the fact that numbers does not somehow disqualify your impact, because that is clear about our impact. And America's culture is built around Black Americans here. Before 1865, from 1619 to 1865, America really didn't have a culture. It wasn't until after 1865 when we were no longer physically oppressed, even though we still experience it, but the laws began to change, where you begin to see 1910 and 1920, where women begin to actually come out of the corsets This is white women, where you began to see in the 1900s until 1999, you saw the greatest amount of progress in America since they had all of the economic treasury. They had all of those things, but they did not have true progress or development, no expansion in technology, medicine, or any of those occupations or genres of civilized culture. It wasn't until after 1865 that you began to see real change in America. And the only thing that would speak to why those changes would have happened was because of the Emancipation Proclamation. Before then, all America did was repeat the relics. They took the same traditions from its European culture. They were still singing opera. That was sort of the elitist sort of entertainment bar and venue. But prior to that, then jazz came along, and before Europeans got a hold of jazz, they called it vulgar.
Sure did.
So when we talk about the Black Lives Matter, absolutely. I think the fact that we're here, that matters. I think it's more about elevating our story and not allowing certain propaganda to feed to us our value system. We cannot despise or disdain the oppressor's system and then use their model to define our progress or who we are. If, of course, these certain things that we're doing in our communities and the work that I and many others that are doing across our nation that don't get publicized, but we must know that if the intentions and the motives and the systems of oppression and anti-life, if they were greater than those that were on the pathway of developing a greater sense of empathy and love in our communities, then we would all have been destroyed. So there must be something greater in the helm and in the groundswell that allows for humanity to still break through these vices that constantly stipulate how we express God, how we express infinite, how we express source on this planet. So we do matter. But there must come a place where we begin to take greater accountability for our neighborhoods.
Yes. Ownership.
We must take ownership for our neighborhoods, our children. We can't expect that the public system that was not designed around its truthful history to educate our children. We can't frustrate about the same issues that we've been frustrating about for 400 years without educating ourselves and positioning ourselves in places, first within ourselves and our minds, to not have the expectation come from a government that does not include you.
Right.
So, but I am absolutely on that path where I understand how frustrating it is to be working in communities and people pat me on the back as if I need that as a compliment. And I'm like, what I'm doing is a witness of the possibility. Partner and stand with me. I don't need accolades and I don't need you to clap your hands. I need for us to stand together to create a force field of protection for our children, for our elderly, for the least of them that dwell among us. That is our point. That is the purpose of the work that we're doing, but not to constantly stay in a state of trauma where we're always reactionary and waiting for the next tragedy in order for us to react by just rhetoric. That there is no real power. And no, you don't necessarily need a plan. You don't necessarily need a movement. You just need to move. You need to just step outside of your door and just for the next neighbor across the way that necessarily does not have the tools equipped for their child, but maybe you do have a child, or maybe you do have a cookie, or maybe you have a tool or a resource, or just a kindness of a smile to let them know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
It doesn't take some revolutionary response in order for us to be impactful in our communities. We don't have to wait for a grant. You don't have to wait for donations to be kind. You don't have to wait to act out love and to be an example of the God that you say that you serve, that you can penetrate the atmosphere. If they say 2 or 3 are gathered in his name and it's in the midst, then if you believe that, then we don't have to sit around a tree and put bears and balloons around the spot of someone else's death, when we can appreciate the life right now and pull a child aside and stop criticizing the way they're responding to our critique about their generation as opposed to realizing that we need to link up and impart wisdoms one into another because we're the only ones. Justice is just us.
Just us.
It's us.
Just
Woo.
us.
Powerful, powerful. I hope you are listening out there. We're on Break Free on IntellectualRadio.com. We are talking about important matters in our Black communities as Black people in this society, in this country, in this nation, giving a voice to those who may seem that they don't have a voice.
For real,
To
for real.
understand that you do have a voice.
For real.
And with that being said, if you want to call and ask some questions or you just want to chime in on the discussion, you can dial 708-223-8953. Yes, that's 708-223-8953 on Break Free on IntellectualRadio.com. Now, this powerful sister, Miss Pearl, she is a community activist and she doesn't just sit back and look and murmur, complain, or say, woe is us. She is out in the community taking action, doing things for her community. I did attend a workshop that she put together because she saw a need. And that's what it's about, seeing a need and then bringing the resources within our community
Yeah.
to take care of that need. We took a workshop on mental health first
So needed.
aid.
Yeah.
That's so
Mental
needed.
health
Yeah.
first aid. That is so needed within our communities,
For sure.
within our families.
For sure. For sure.
We learn so many positive nuggets on helping, being an agent for change,
Yeah.
Yes.
in identifying those who are in need,
Yes.
identifying tools and ways for us to help them, and identifying ways and tools to help within our own families.
Yeah. For
Yes.
sure.
For sure.
Within our own families, to get rid of stigmas,
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
break stigmas about mental health, to break stigmas that we don't have to be hush hush anymore.
Right.
Right.
We don't have to be hush hush because when you're hush hush, that's when things escalate.
Right.
Right.
They
As we see.
escalate,
As we
we
see.
have seen.
Mhm.
You know, the poor young man and the neighbor who didn't have to lose their life because he had a mental illness
Right.
that could have been taken care of a lot differently if the family and the officers were more informed. If
Yeah.
they had taken a mental health first aid training as
Yes.
we did. So these are the things, these are the resources that we want to highlight on Break Free. Those in our community that are making a difference, that have resources, because I want to see the next time that we do that training, because I am definitely going to bring it to the South Side. So I thank you because now I have a way. I got connected to the individuals that did the training, and
It's important.
they're going to come to the South Side,
That's
South
right.
suburbs,
We need
and
it.
do the training more. That's because Pearl saw a need and she opened it up, and
Yes.
she provided space for this to happen. There weren't as many people as we would like. So I want to say to us as a race, when the things are available, and especially when they are free,
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
that
Right.
would cost you,
Talk about that.
they are free for you to
Free.
take advantage of the resources that many community activists are placing in the communities for us to grow and for us to be that love. Like you said, to be that love, go door to door, be that love, spread the word. This is happening in our communities.
Right.
Right.
You know, we can make a change.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
if we just do
Help
one
another.
thing,
Help each other.
one thing is a great accomplishment rather than do nothing and sit
Yes.
back and just watch.
I think Martin Luther King said that. Just greatness is not everybody will be famous, but everybody can be great
Right.
through service. You know, sometimes it's the simple things. And sometimes that's all that we can handle is something simple. For me, like in the work that I do I call it a community artivist, because I'm a performing artist as well. I like to bring that to everything that I do. But one thing that we can do whenever I am engaging with the community and having conversations with people, like I'm working right now for our community garden. And so I've been over there cleaning the community garden and making sure that it's properly harvested. And so want to create a rotation of at least 30 people that are interested in gardening, and one person a month can just commit to that day to making sure that our garden is kept up. And so, what it does, I just want people to participate in ways that bring them joy automatically, because it's a lot. When we are aware as Black citizens in this country, we have been and we have inherited the responsibility of our oppression, the consequences of our oppression, as well as the um, the repair. So it's like a cost analysis. So we have to deal with how the oppression has affected us. And we have to deal with the responsibility of repairing ourselves and healing ourselves. And so, in that regard, it's sort of always feeling like you're at ground zero. But if we're able to somehow face those things that are a challenge and add our joy to it. Like, if you know you really don't like seeing litter and you do love cleaning, you love beautification, you could participate in just aligning with others. I've created a neighborship network, not just for my block and my community surrounding blocks, but for the city and other blocks, that you have people that want to get involved, but they don't necessarily have a group, or they don't necessarily have people to partner. We can partner with you, come to your community, and then help you organize and help you go door to door and speak to your neighbor, help to mobilize with you, so you don't feel so alone in the task of how we are beginning to heal our communities. So sometimes we do feel overwhelmed because we realize we're aware of the history. We are aware clearly that every time there is any efforts to build Black communities, that there are real agents that are built to bring those efforts to an end,
Oh yes.
to kill those leaders. I mean, that's real. That's not, that's not a conspiracy theory. We understand very clearly from Black Wall Street and many other efforts. Every time Black people have asserted their humanity to change their situation, there's always been efforts to bring fear to people that tried. So we're aware of that. But what we don't stop trying, and we don't stop doing, because we're only going to be here for a set amount of time anyway. So
Amen.
while you're here, you do your part and leave that to the next generation. At least give them something to hold on to, because we do connect with our ancestors. We do connect with those in our line that we have been able to admire, and those that we aspire to emulate. We do see those examples there. So even if those efforts are somehow thwarted, don't stop trying, because every man, woman, boy, and girl are still accountable for those tools, those talents, and gifts that you have been given to manage on the planet. It's still yours.
It's
So
still
you
yours.
you can't you don't have an excuse for that. To be able to say that, like the man with the talent. Well,
Oh.
I hid it in the ground because I was afraid. It's like, the reality is that weeping and gnashing of teeth is you are left to the fears that you perpetuated. That weeping and gnashing of teeth is your own fears that eat you alive. And that is what you're left to, is the consequences of knowing better and not doing better. So we don't get to. I started a long time ago. I was like, I don't need to be nobody hero. I see what you do to your heroes and saviors.
What you
So
say? Look,
no,
don't put me in that class.
no, because I already know what humanity does. I mean, if your example of God came in the flesh and you crucified dude, like you killed him, and it was like ruthless, and then afterwards you all like, you know what, we love him. I'm like, you know what, I think he would have loved to live. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I really think that Martin Luther King would have preferred to live his life. but he did. He gave it because it was the only option.
Yes.
Because for freedom was what he wanted, and freedom was something that would not be allowed without this particular sacrifice. But
There
it
you
wasn't
go.
that he didn't want to be there to raise his children. And so when we herald people, there's this thing I wrote in one piece, and I said, we love our heroes. We love their quotes. We just don't love them alive. Post-mortem anecdotes.
Ooh.
See, the great ones always seem to speak louder from the grave while we statue them concrete and marble slate. Quotations are noble if through your actions they speak, but ain't no point in repeating if when truth stands, you stay seated. If you got a dream, then you got to believe it. Otherwise, be a parrot with cage merit and bird seated. It takes more than wings and a desire to fly. It takes falling from cliff courage on wind lifts to go high. Find something worth falling for, worth standing for, and write your dreams in the sky. But it's that.
Man.
That kind
Hey,
Go
click,
ahead.
click,
All
click. I
right
told
now.
you the
Yes,
spoken
yes,
word
yes.
artist here in the house with us tonight.
All right.
Yes, yes. Oh, powerful. Powerful. Yeah. And so
But
you
that is
mentioned
part of
that
mental
you
health.
have the
Mhm.
community.
Part of mental health.
It is part of mental health. And you mentioned your community organization
Yeah.
and you partner. So give them more information about the name of your organization and how do they contact you?
A neighborship network. That is a neighborship network. I'm not just felt like I should be more Geico in this experience, but um, it's on Facebook, the Neighborship Network, or you could just look me up, Pearl Ramsey, RAM as in Mary, S as in Sam, EY on Facebook, and just inbox me, and I can send you the links to our Facebook page I've just created within the last 2 weeks. It's called the Neighborship Network. And I make sure that I post. For me, the social media has become a platform for storytelling. And so for me, it is a personal conviction to use those platforms to tell the stories that I want to see and the stories that I want to hear, to create a new type of cycle in the way that I am communicating my Black experience. And I do believe it is absolutely important that I communicate it as a Black experience because that experience has already been told over and over again through the lens of Google Trends or some kind of like Google Map. You looking at my community and you have already decided what our bottom line is in terms of our values and who we are and how we express ourselves based on a number diagram. And so for me, it's like you don't get a say. You don't get a say into something that you're not invested in.
Come on, say that again.
So mind your business. I always say, mind your business, cornfields. Mind your business. No, I just always think it's quite funny how people like who live in suburbs have so much to say about city life. I'm like, you got a population of 8,000 to maybe 30,000 people. Chicago with Blacks alone, just the city, 1 million and something plus people, 2 million something people. And so just with the Black community alone, you're trying to partake in a conversation that first of all you weren't invited in, second of all you have no love for, third of all you have no reference for, you have no knowledge, you have no real perspective based on anything you dealing with, based on some parlay, based on some nuggets that are false.
False. That's true.
And they just shouting out the box, and then sometimes I'm like, man, take 12 seats back, 6 feet under if you want to, and step off from this conversation because I cannot have any real dialogue with people when I know you don't love him. You don't love him. You don't love my coach. You don't love these children. You don't have to deal with the burying of their brothers and sisters. And that is real. They were saying how about post PTSD, that they have found more the PTSD is higher in communities of young Black communities with children who have experienced gun violence than those that have gone to war. So we sometimes think of PTSD as somehow going away to war, but we're dealing with trauma, things that are just not normal, with children having to bury their brothers and sisters and fathers and mothers and loved ones and go back to school. And then you have a chart based on red, yellow, and green that rate them, but you haven't addressed them. But in these suburban communities, they make sure a day is taken off. And then there is a collective understanding about the need for counseling and therapy. And so we know that that's important for human beings. But again, these systems have not included this Black experience a part of the humanity. Now, that doesn't make it any less valid because you cannot build and set a trap for anyone. In fact, you cannot enslave someone without holding your own self down.
Mm.
You become a slave anytime you have to monitor and make sure that a person stays enslaved. So when you create systems of genocide that ultimately are intended to break down the moral fiber of a human being's desire to have hope, and you think that you're not connected to that vibration, and then you cry out mental illness in situations where in suburbs where children, your very children, are taking the same AR-15s and rifles to kill other children in otherwise safe communities. Areas where you've been provided with all the resources, you've been given all the tools, you've been given the picture perfect example of what it is to live in a place of safety and comfort and wholeness. Yet, you're experiencing the same epidemics
Sure.
that you've invested in for another group of people because you become divisive in your own design because you somehow think that the humanity is different. And so that very connection it is corrosive. And so in our communities, for me, when we're looking at mental illness, Black people are always in a perpetual state of trauma. And even though we have learned how to function
In our trauma.
in it, we are wounded in this, and we're not allowed to just heal. And that's something we just have to give ourselves permission to heal, permission to not be so harsh.
Feel trapped.
What you say?
People feel trapped.
They feel trapped. That's what she said.
I'm
She's
just,
talking
yeah,
soft.
Oh, yeah.
I'm listening
Yeah.
to you.
They
No, I
feel
was listening
trapped.
to you.
Yeah, they feel trapped.
Mm.
And this training, so I'm bringing it up now because I want the house to be packed. I want our community leaders to send every church, if every church sent one representative. You know how many Black
Churches need
we
that in
have?
general.
Yeah,
Black churches,
Yeah.
and sure, they really,
Yeah.
really need to step up the game.
step
Like,
it up.
I honestly, that's my own. This is not your opinion. My own is that the Black churches have failed the Black community.
Very much.
That's my that's my feeling. They have failed the Black community because it was a central meeting spot, a place that was central to the Black community. One, because it was the only place where Black people could go without the immediate threat of harm. Now, even though our churches were bombed, but it was used and as a space where we could. That's why Black music ultimately created the culture of America, because it was really the only sounds of freedom that we have. It was the
Amen.
only way we could express ourselves. That was our freedom. And ultimately, it has set the world free.
Express ourselves.
It was through a song, it was through a moan.
Right. That freed us. From
That's what freed us, because that was the only way that we could express our humanity
right.
without the immediate threat of death
Or danger.
or danger.
Because it was entertainment.
For that's
It was their entertainment.
their
but
entertainment.
It was our Morse code.
Yeah.
It was
There you
it
go.
was our Morse
There you
Morse
go.
code
That's it.
that elevated our people to a strength in liberation.
That was freedom for us.
A
That was-
liberation.
That was it. That was more, and they don't get it. That's why sometimes when it's so. Let me stop. I won't do that. Go back to community, the mental health. So yes, because I know I was no yes,
A
absolutely. It was the liberation.
It
It was the only way. It was for us our only connection to God, our only connection to a force that allowed us to feel at home in our skin. And that is America, that's its own tragedy that it doesn't want to confront. And the thing is, again, as long as America continues to perpetuate its own lies, Greatness comes with a price. And you cannot boast of greatness without telling a story of how you became great and what that means. So, if you're going to boast of greatness, you need to tell the true story. Nothing starts off great. And so, if the story of greatness is based on this fictional account of somehow breaking free from Britain and somehow being able to establish yourself in this manifest destiny and of the new world order in order to perpetuate the same design over and over again, then and then you wonder why in the truth of the statistics of the history why there are so many serial killers in white culture. If you're not able to address that, that's the true mental health. The mental illness in our culture, mental health is a response to its environment. So if you are going to study the symptoms, you must study the environment.
That's true.
And so until we can have that, even if America doesn't have that discussion with itself, I think for Black culture, we need to understand the trauma of our plight, understand the duress of what we're under, understand that yes, we are creating our own joy and our own happiness, but we cannot discount the reality of what this is that we're facing. And you can see it when you're in the community. If you're not in the community and you can hide in the comforts of your own home, then perhaps you're able to adopt a different fable.
Hmm.
But the truth, you can see it in the streets. And so we're going to be doing things like mental health and gardening, um, getting our fingers and hands back in the soil, all of us, those that are there to take responsibility for that garden, put our hands back in the soil and just begin to cultivate the land, even in this small space that we're in. We just had a financial literacy course for the youth
Now
on
that's
Saturday.
great.
It
That's
was called
great.
Money Walks If You Don't Talk About It. And so
Mm.
we wanted the create, I just wanted to start the discussion. Now, for me, it's not just about the topics, it's about building trust. So the things that I do in the community have more to do with the fact that I want to be consistent and diligent because I understand that our people have been exploited. I understand that we don't trust each other. We don't trust anyone mostly. And so our guards are always up a lot of times. So when people come to your door telling you about another program, when they come to your door telling you about another thing to do, they have always seen those efforts fail.
That's true.
They have seen it. And I get it. But it's for me, I take this responsibility to follow through. And that is at any cost. Whatever that takes, I must do it because I understand what that is. So if the kids come to my door and they want to play and they want to play football, they want to go play basketball, they want to go to the park with me, I understand why. For me, it's about building trust again. The programs allow for the trust to be built. The programs are not the focus in and of itself, it's the people. So I use the programs to have a conversation in order to just I just sometimes walk up to young men and I'll be a young woman and I'm like, "Hi, how you doing?" And I was like, "Listen, I know you're on a run and I know you're getting ready to go and everything. I just want to introduce myself because we don't talk to each other anymore and we don't say hi. So I just want to say hi to you and I just really appreciate you stopping and even making eye contact with me. And so if you see me again, just say hi to me. And if you don't, I'll say hi to you. We have a community garden and I'll just begin like on this fast paced pace and I'll go with it or whatever. But it's always, it's again, it's just about building trust again, just to let
Engagement.
them, it's all it is. Just saying hi.
Engagement. A lot of people don't speak to people and say hi and just like you said, sense of community.
Right.
So and that also helps alleviate some of the stress and the mental things that people are going.
It's real.
It's so real. It's so real.
No, that's real what you said. Just knowing somebody cares. Because even when I look at our babies and stuff, they are so hardened.
Yes, they
I'll say hi to a
are.
small child and they just are so skeptical.
Yes, they are.
And I'm like, wow,
Yes,
what
they are.
happened? So I'm like, okay, that's fine. I get it. I get it. Maybe you just haven't seen it enough, but hi. So I remember their names like last night, Ramon and Jaquif and Isaiah. I remember those young men.
Hey guys.
Yeah, wherever they are in the world, those are your sons. I saw them walking down the street, and Inez and Mark that live over by my neighborhood, and Miss Evie that has a daycare down on 92nd. Because we have art seed in our community, so I go tell the parents and around the neighborhood about art seed is where the Chicago Park District comes to different parks and they create these art stations, and of course, if you don't take advantage of those funds are allocated, reallocated. So artsy to Lorraine Dixon Park, we do that. But I'm not here to really, I'm not really here to really boast about really anything about myself. I just think that, um, I mean, people take it for what it is because if it's genuine, people can feel it. So I don't really need all that. I don't really need all of that so much. I do want to share so that people know it's accessible.
Yes.
And I am allowing people the space to intelligently make a decision about what's best for them. So it's like, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that. If it doesn't help you, pass the word to someone else. Let them know that this is available to them because you don't know where people are in their lives.
We don't.
And it's important. We are all dealing with some things. And it's one thing to just go through life things, but in the Black community, it's a whole nother thing. There's life, and then there's the living while Black in America that comes with a whole other navigation that you're really not equipped with mentally because it really is contrary to normal psychological development. It doesn't, it's not natural. It's not natural to question your existence in your skin and to feel like you have to now um, put on so many different faces to make sure that certain people are comfortable with the way you express yourself, from your hair to your clothing to your tone of voice to your accent to your vernacular to these are things that you naturally do, and it's a very weird thing
Right.
to have to be aware of that and know that that people that are not in that experience are not even clear. They have no idea. White America, it really oftentimes, unless they are, white America has self-educated themselves, unless they've allowed themselves to really participate in their own human experience in a way that they understand what this America government, this particular systems are, then they're detached and they're in a bubble. So we're having to go, no, they really did mean to hurt me. You're like, oh my God, it's like, no, but they really did fire me because my hair is this texture, like my born in hair. That's weird.
Yeah.
It is very
It's
weird.
unnatural.
It's
Very
right.
It's
unnatural.
very unnatural.
So it's like, how do you even teach? And that's its own mental illness.
That is.
And
true.
how do you express to a child that you are a child, but yet your stands and just your presence can frighten an adult.
Right.
I'm just me, and I'm still a child, and they're the authority. But that authority figure finds me
Intimidating
intimidating
or
and threatening
threatening.
just from me being me.
And me saying no, that doesn't, me having a very natural exchange of questions, inquisition. I don't understand that. I want to know. And then you allow that, which is, education should be a space for that, to ask questions, or
Yes,
even on your job, just
should
ask
be.
questions, and to have to figure out, okay, how do I say it this way so that they are not spooked out and call the police and I'm not shot and killed? That literally the tone of my voice and my reaction could cost me my life for something otherwise just a very natural exchange
Exchange.
of a communication exchange. That
That's very real. That's very real. That's why it's so much trauma with our children. Not just that, it's really relevant and real with our children because they feel like they can't express themselves, their true self. They can't ask questions.
no,
They can't they can't move.
They
No.
feel trapped.
They feel trapped.
They can feel
As
trapped.
a child.
They do.
As a child. So can you imagine the stress, the mental stress on a child that outside, even in their home, sometimes they're trapped in their home.
Yeah, not to mention.
That's a big thing.
Woo! I was just talking about that with somebody. Really, here's this other thing that is a very unseen component into the Black equation is because of systemic oppression, we are oftentimes put in situations where we are bound and gagged to not talk about things happening in our community, like pedophilia or molestation, or in our churches, the things that happen are not addressed. Like, that's what's also strange in the midst of it, because we're having to deal with the fact of inequality and marginalizations and injustices in our community based on this race construct. Now we can't talk about other issues in our community, that because it's like there's a sense of guilt if you talk about things in the Black community, just your community. In the same way, though, that white people don't talk about their own stigmas in their community. You don't talk about, like, it was one when Black we had that and sometimes that's another thing that's just so frustrating, is we feel sometimes bound to the story of Black and white. It's like
it's the human race.
It's a
human thing.
And humans do it, right? And Chinese do it to Chinese, believe it or not. No, really.
For real.
Chinese, seriously, like genocide in Chinese culture. I mean, millions of people. Like, it's real what's happening with Chinese culture. Russians, what they do to Russians.
I mean, it's human culture.
Human culture, what they do
to each other.
Right.
This is nothing new.
It is.
That's very real.
Story.
Yeah.
Right.
What goes on in this house stays in this house. And it's like,
what goes on in our culture stays
in our culture, and it's like,
and no one heals.
Yeah, no one heals.
And no one heals.
And we're not protecting it.
Perpetuate itself over and over and over, a cycle.
It's a cycle, and we're not protecting our kids mostly. Yeah. One woman in our neighborhood, Barbara, I will never forget you. She just died about a week ago. And Barbara was maybe 52, young woman. But Barbara lived on our block, and she was raised in a household where her grandfather was like the pastor. And he was literally raping and molesting all the girls in the house. And nobody talked about it. And she ended up on drugs.
I'm sure.
And that's where, and it's just something to her mind. And it just, what does a person do when they are in systems where, according to those that are in positions of power and influence, they say that God will fix it, or they often condone it in the name of God?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the safety? Where's our responsibility to these hypocrisies? Where is the responsibility? We have a responsibility to protect those, no matter who name you guys, who name you mask yourself in. So if we're going to address and deal with mental health, we're going to have to deal with the conditions that we have accepted as normal.
Truth and reality.
This has been a very thought-provoking discussion. I hope that you have just chewed on some things that we've talked about. And, after you chew on them, see where you can step up, help out. This class that we're going to be having in the South Suburbs, and I'm sure we'll have it again in the city, we're going to announce those things. That's what Break Free, that's why Break Free is on the air. That's what Break Free is about. Break Free is saying time out for just throwing things under the rug, not dealing with things, being hush hush. No, we're going to break free from some things. And we're going to give you those tools and those resources to go and seek help, go be change agents, because it just takes one. It just takes one. You don't know. You step out and speak and say hello, and you look beautiful today. That might change that person from going down the street and jumping off a cliff. You don't know. So these are little things that we can do. And it doesn't cost us a thing. It doesn't cost us a thing. So that's what Break Free is about on IntellectualRadio.com. That's why we're here. And I hope you have enjoyed the conversation. I'm going to ask Miss Pearl, you want to give us another eloquent as we roll on out of here.
Like, what?
What exactly? What's on the
Pearls
menu?
of-
What are you thinking?
I kept thinking about break free, and I said, I know there's something that she can just rattle off about breaking free.
About breaking free.
Mm.
Wow. So we got 6 minutes of the clock. Rattling off about breaking free.
Breaking free on IntellectualRadio.com. We're going to close out with Miss Pearl and her pearls of wisdom, because it has been a dynamic discussion.
And it's not just a discussion, but we need to be active.
Yes.
For sure.
You know, as she brought out, Pearl so eloquently brought out in the very beginning, knocking on door, next door.
Say hi.
Say hi. You know, just simple things like that. You know, some of us been living next door to each other while she's thinking about what she's going to do. We've been living next door to each other for years and might not have even said
hello.
For real. Listen, stop using fear as an excuse. Everybody has a responsibility to their own sphere of influence. You affect many lives in your own sphere, and you're accountable to those lives. That blood is on your hands. And so, not to be cute and coy about it, but we affect each other. Just like water, we're all connected. And so, like the rivers flows into the seas, you're flowing into someone else's wellness as others are flowing into yours. And we cannot perpetuate the same sort of poverty that I call greed. Greed is just another extreme for poverty, where you hold everything. You are still malnourished, because nothing like money as a currency is meant to flow. And so you are not given this wealth of wisdom, knowledge, and resources to keep it for yourself. So this is one little thing. Is just says it's like about 30 seconds. It goes, okay. When you feel overwhelmed by the news, there's no light in the tunnel for you. Every lie sounds right, like the truth. All you have is your path. No one answers for your actions but you. That's all.
Hey. All right, that's okay.
All right. We'll see you on the first Sunday of August on Break Free on IntellectualRadio.com. Thank you for joining us. We're out.